Okay, well, welcome on everyone. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Tanya Cottrell, and in just a few moments, I'm going to be introducing our special guest, Mindy Starns Clark. And so I just want to give just a quick little brief summary of why we're gathered here today, why I've asked Mindy to come on, and then I'm going to introduce her, and we're going to have a great conversation today. By the way, you can share in the chat. You can find the chat if you look down and find the three little dots. Open up the chat because that's a place where you can tell us where you're joining from. If you have a question, if we have time for Q&A, you can put it in there ahead of time if you'd like. And we do have a giveaway coming on today's Zoom. And so about partway through the class, I'm going to be putting a link in that chat. And you'll want to click that link because that's where you're going to enter your name and your info. And so if you have that open now, you'll be ready to go and you won't miss it. So most of you are part of just a fun Facebook group we started a few weeks ago. And I decided to do the house that cleans itself in my home for the second time as kind of a whole work through my house process. And I just decided I want to do it with friends because I do better when I do things with people and I have a group to lead people through. So I knew the system worked great because I had done it clear back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, when I first stumbled on Mindy's book in a Christian bookstore on a sale rack sitting by the counter. And I was like, that looks intriguing. I bought it and it really revolutionized things in my home. And I loved it. And that was when we lived in Montana. We now live in Oregon. And it's been in my mind for a few years, actually. I'd really like to go through a whole process of the house that cleans itself system in this home and really set it up in the way that we had it back in our old home. And so that has been really fun for me to dive back into. What I've really noticed though, is as I go through and I work, I'm noticing, oh, I did kind of naturally apply some of these principles just because it had become second nature because of the wisdom that Mindy had shared all those years ago through her book. And so a lot of you have come in because you saw me posting on social media, like, hey, you want to learn how to do this? Let's just do it together. I'll lead you through the book and kind of a book club with, hands and feet on it that we're all in our house doing things. And it's just been so much fun to kind of go through this over the last 5 weeks. And I just sort of had this idea one day, like, what if I could reach out to Mindy Starnes Clark and see if we could actually pick her brain a little bit? And I just thought she's so successful, probably not, but you never know if you don't ask. So I reached out and she was so gracious to respond to me. And she said yes. So we are here today. And I've got some questions for her. We're just gonna let her talk and share her wisdom with us. And then if we have some time, we might even open it up to some Q&A for you. So let me tell you a little bit about Mindy's background. She is a best-selling author of more than 30 books. That's the number I saw on her site anyway, of more than 30 books, you guys, both fiction and nonfiction. Most of her books are are fiction. I have not yet read them, I'm embarrassed to say, but I looked through the list and they look it's so good. Lots of Amish themed stories and nonfiction books. In fact, I'm going to actually put a link in the chat. If you are curious to look at her book list, you can pop that open and look or save it for later. And look at that. So she's received a lot of awards, literary honors, including 2 Christie Awards and RT Book Review's Career Achievement Award. She and her husband, John, have 2 adult children and they live near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And so we are just thrilled to have her on here. Mindy, welcome. If you could unmute yourself. Or if you can't,
Yeah.
I can figure out.
Yes, I did. I got
Okay.
it.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I've got your book sitting right here. This is my second
Oh,
copy
good.
because my first copy was the first edition and then I couldn't find it. So I have the second edition here. And
That's the first one.
yeah, the first one's
That's
more
it. Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Yes. I know a lot of the people on this call here are in the process. Some of them are brand new. They just said, oh, this sounds neat. So they may be hearing about this for the first time. Some have the old book, some have the audio book, some have the new book. But I think I'd love to start by just asking you to maybe share a little bit about how this book came to be. It's totally different than the other books you've written and very personal to your like practical living. Can you tell us a little bit about why you wrote this?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And first, let me say thank you for having me here. This is so fun. When I got your email, I was like, oh, wow, it's been a while since somebody has done one of these. And I thought, yes, I want to come. That's neat. I'm so excited. I'm
Love it.
thrilled when people do it together. I really am. At the time the book came out, I was so busy with my fiction. I didn't have time to like set up my own Facebook groups and my own networks of people doing it. And I wish I had, because I missed a lot of the fun. So I'm glad that y'all are enjoying it, and that it seems to be working well to do it with
Yeah,
friends.
it
Always
is
better to do it with
always
friends, right?
better with people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Um, as far as how the book came to be, it's kind of a long story. Short version, I have always been a horrible housekeeper, like really bad. Not like filthy dirty, just like messy, mess, stuff. I used to say my house was so filthy you had to wipe your feet on the way out, because it was, it was that bad, sort of. I couldn't stand it, and it was bad enough when I was single and living alone and just managing my own stuff. Then you get married and you got two people, then you start having kids, and it was crazy. We lived in the disaster all the time, and a lot of emotions that come with that, the frustration and the irritation. And it's like I couldn't understand why I couldn't get a handle on it. I had a handle on a lot of other things in my life, and why is my house such a mess all the time? And then I sold my first novel. I was 40 years old at the time. My daughters were like 10 and 12, and it was a mystery series. So I went from and they wanted 5 books in the series. So I went from having like a full-time mom with a little side part-time job to suddenly a more than full-time job. So it got even worse, because I didn't have 2 seconds to clean anything. And so at least I used the little bit of money I was making on the books to hire a maid, and she'd come once a week. And once a week, she'd work a miracle, and my house would actually be fine. And then within hours of her leaving, it would have completely fallen apart again. And I couldn't stand it. So that's what it was like. That's the before. Then I finished my first series and I started working on a second series. The first one was about a private investigator. The second one was about a woman. I always liked household hints. I may be bad at housekeeping, but I always loved nowadays they're called hacks, but hints and tips and tricks. So I came up with a series. It's called The Smart Chick Mysteries, where the girl, she's a household hints expert, and she uses her knowledge of household hints to help solve crime. So that was fun. And even though, personally, I'm no housekeeper, she was, and her house was always clean. And that was kind of relieving, because at least when I go into my story, I'm spending time with someone who knows how to do it. But anyway, I wrote 3 books in that series. And I would say by the time I was starting the 3rd book in the series, it struck me I had read something like 38 books on housekeeping, because I had to use them for research for the mysteries. 38 books on housekeeping, like cover to cover, highlighted. And my house was still a mess. And I kept saying, why? I now have all this knowledge I didn't have before, and I still have a mess. And then it struck me one day, we think of it like something you should just be able to do, but maybe it's not something you should just be able to do. Maybe housekeeping is a talent, and it's a talent I didn't have. And with that realization was the thought of, well, if I don't have the talent, it's never going to get clean, but we got to figure out a way to get it clean. So maybe instead of trying to change my behavior, which is never going to change myself, clearly I'm not going to change, maybe I need to change my house. And it just sort of came together from there, because it struck me that all those 38 books were written by women and men who just were naturally gifted at housekeeping. And the reason they didn't work for me is because my brain didn't work like their brain works. I just didn't have that talent. I didn't have that skill set. And so I approached it completely differently. And I started looking at my house and sort of actually treating it like a private detective, because that's what I write. And it struck me that a lot of my messes were the same messes. Even if, the maid would come, get it all clean, it all fall apart again. It was maybe a different pile of clothes, but it was still a pile of clothes right there. And it was maybe different papers, but it was still papers. And I just started analyzing my home and looking at it from a less emotional perspective, and just said, okay, those clothes were always in that pile on the floor in the corner of my bedroom. What could I do to change that? And that was sort of the beginning. So I just started working on my house. It took me like a year of just quietly making little changes. And when something worked, then it was exciting. So I'd throw in a few more. And by the end of about a year, and I hadn't really explained to my husband what I was doing. He turned to me and said, "Man, the house is so clean lately, and I don't really see you doing anything more than usual. It's almost like the house is cleaning itself." And I said, the house is cleaning itself. That is exactly what it was. My house was cleaning itself because I finally had set up my house so that it would stay clean. So basically, that's when I said, you know what? I need to put this idea out there. I might be able to put this in a book. And everyone thought I was crazy. And anyone who's really good at housekeeping, they just look at me like I'm nuts. They don't get it. And it's like, well, you probably won't unless this is a problem for you, in which case you'll really get it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
that's
guess my
me. I really got it because I can already
really,
tell I'm
yeah.
wired so similarly to you. And just so you know, I gave you for everyone out there, I gave you a little bit of Mindy's bio, but if you go on her website, she's got her whole kind of life story written out, and it's so
Oh, yeah.
interesting. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
noticed right away that you were raised by a mother who was a creative, and I was too. I am the daughter of an artist, and we're all artists and
Oh, yeah.
creative. And when you have that creative mind, I don't know if anyone else on this call can relate, your brain is just going all the time in like doing and making and
Mhm.
not stopping to think about cleaning up after yourself or
Yeah.
and so I think that's why it worked so well for me too, because I couldn't just like change all my habits,
Yes.
you know. So if I set the environment up to work with my habits and with my family's habits,
Mhm.
it finally worked. It was finally the thing, not perfectly, but it gave me a fighting chance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Which is the goal. The goal is not perfection. It's a fighting chance. It's getting a
right.
handle on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm sure since your book came out, I don't remember what year it came out, in like the
Um,
2000s, maybe.
2000. Isn't that funny? I should know that.
Yeah,
2007. 2007.
2007. Okay. So I'm sure through the years you've met and talked to people that have used the book, have applied the book, have seen it help them. And I'm curious, like what are the top benefits that you have noticed either in your own home, in your own life, or things people have shared with you that has
Right.
how it has benefited
Right.
them?
Oh gosh. A lot. And that's been the most satisfying part of it, is hearing
Mhm.
back from people and how some people, their whole lives have changed from it, like mine has.
Yeah.
I think the biggest is just the 1,000 pounds off your shoulders. That feeling of I am a failure, I am ashamed, I am frustrated, I'm mad. That's it's gone. And when it goes away, that I think is the number one thing, that you finally feel like, okay, this is something that um, you know, I can get a handle on. I just have to get a handle on it in a way that works for me. And so I think that's a big one. Um, I think more time. You got more time because you're not spending so much time not only just cleaning, but also looking for things, that you've lost because they're in the mess. So that's a big one. And just things like that. Just a lot of
Yeah.
more social interactions. Because how many people, I mean, raise your hand if can't have people over because
Mhm.
it's too much of a mess. And it's like, that's sad. It's sad. If your
Yeah,
house
it
is
is.
in control, you just have a much bigger life, so to speak, just a much more open way of living. So
Yeah,
those
it
are
opens the door
big
to
ones.
hospitality and not living
Yes,
in that
yes,
stress if someone comes to the door. Or
exactly.
if we have someone over for dinner, I have to plan 4 days of cleaning ahead of time,
Yes, yeah,
that,
uh-huh.
so you don't plan it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
um,
exactly.
yeah, well, uh, I know you have probably I mean, there's so much in the book. So many little tricks and hacks. I'm wondering if you have any favorite. Do you have any top favorite tips, tricks that for you in your life, in your home that you love the
Oh,
most?
sure. Yeah, and it's hard to stop talking about them because there's just so many little things. Um, Probably the main quickest difference for us was just putting certain like containers in certain places, like closed, not visible. I hate open shelving. Close them. Close them. If you're not going to keep them neat, close them. Um, you know, just like um, in our living room, every morning I'd get up and there'd be throw blankets all over the couch because that we'd watch TV at night and we'd all have our little blanket and then we'd all leave them in a mess. And I used to spend, 20 minutes folding the blankets and putting them over on the visible shelf. And it's like, I don't do that. I don't do it. So then all day I walk past the living room and it's like, oh, ugh. Got a big basket, stuck it in the corner. It has a lid in the morning, scoop up the blankets, throw them in the basket, put those on the basket, and now they're gone and the room looks clean. It's silly things like that that people who are naturally gifted to this just go, yeah.
Save
But
the effort of
yes,
folding, just
yes,
dump. Yeah,
yes.
just
So that would
dump.
be one.
Yeah.
Lots of contain. I don't do containers for containers' sake. I'm actually really against that. You got to figure out what you need, but then once you do, those can be a big help. I think camouflage, you know, like you buy a rug. If you have a white dog, why do you have a dark rug? Things like that. You can camouflage a lot. I got a deeper sink when we redid our kitchen because I'm not going to get the dishes done at night after dinner. I'm tired, so I usually don't get to them until like the next afternoon. So my sink is now deep enough you can't see them. They're in there every morning. It doesn't matter because when you walk in my kitchen, it looks nice and clean because my sink is deep. That's camouflage. That's me. I'm never going to be washing my dishes first thing, after dinner. So stuff like that. And then I had, let's see, one more. Probably just rethinking all the closets and cabinets in my entire house because I had them set up the way that I was told I was supposed to. Like if you have like a coat closet by your front door. So what's that for? Well, that's for people's coats when they come over. Meanwhile, your house is filthy, so nobody's coming over. So maybe that's not what that closet should be for. Maybe that's the closet where, because that area of the room is you do a certain activity. And so those things go in there. You just have to rethink in terms of what am I like and what do I do? And then that's probably a couple of my top ones.
Kind of free yourself from what you should be. Yeah. What you
Yes.
think. Yeah. Yeah. I can relate
Yes.
because like the house that I used your book in first, I actually gave birth to my youngest son the day we were moving into that house. He came early. I went to the hospital. I
Oh,
had a baby. And so what happened, it was a new build house, is all my family and loved ones were so gracious. They came and unpacked my boxes for me and set up the kitchen. And which
oh,
it got us through a survival period,
yeah.
but it didn't work for where I
Right.
needed the silverware drawer to be. And so
Mm-hmm.
it came along at just the right time because it
Oh,
helped me,
good.
oh, I can think through this in
Right.
like how I need it to be, not where it should be, where,
Yeah.
grandma
Yeah.
thinks silverware should be, or that
Mm-hmm.
should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard a couple things in what you've said already that are piquing my curious on mindset and like getting rid of feeling guilty, feeling shame, feeling the 1,000 pounds
Mm-hmm.
weight, or
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you just can't, get a handle on it.
Right.
So what do you think some of the biggest mindset blocks are for women who actually just maybe struggle getting started or making progress? Like maybe they buy the book and they just sit there and they're thinking, I don't know how to start, and that paralysis.
That paralysis of getting in and getting it going. Um, well, first of all, you gotta accept the fact that this is probably not a talent you have. If you couldn't sing, if you sing off key, people aren't going to say, "Oh, she should be singing on key." You can't. So take the guilt away, and then understand that behaviors are pretty hard to change. And while you can sometimes change them, work with them better. Okay, so accept those two things: that you're probably not going to change your behavior, and you're probably not very good at this the way most people with clean houses do it. That lets go of a lot of it. Overwhelm is horrible, and I think that's why part of the process for me was taking pictures, because if you photograph the messes, it kind of lets you zoom in a little better. Because if you look at everything, I have had many a times where you just freeze up. And especially if you've tried before, it's kind of like the next diet. You're like, oh, well, here we go again. This one's not going to work either. It's the same thing with housekeeping intentions. But this is different because this is about problem solving, trial and error. And I think that can push away a lot of that overwhelm and that frozen thing. And if you're really frozen, like I said, take a picture, work on what's in that picture. And it kind of can be a ball rolling down a hill, because once you get started, it sort of, can move more smoothly from
That's,
there. Yeah.
you get one little area, you get a win, and then it's sort of
Yes.
addicting. You feel like,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And I have
Do
found,
this.
I can just do one drawer at one day, like take 20 minutes, do a
Right.
drawer and give myself that win. I don't have
Yeah.
to think through whether I have accomplished it throughout the whole house yet.
Right.
That it's
Right.
taking me
Right.
too long. It really doesn't take that long to do one little section.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the idea you came up with the pictures, because to me,
Okay.
before I have to make any decisions or
Right.
actually sort or clean anything or think about throwing anything away, I just have to start with taking some pictures,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
to do,
That's easy.
especially now that we have it on
That's
our,
easy. Yeah.
yeah, it's easy.
And actually, the pictures work better if the house is kind of messy when if it's
Yes,
in a pretty bad state when you take them,
yeah,
because that's a more realistic view of
exactly.
what you're with.
You get to see what are the behaviors
Yes.
for
Yes.
real and stop fooling
Exactly.
ourselves. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay, we're going to pause for a quick second because I'm going to put the giveaway link in and just, I know you've all seen the picture. I've posted it all over Facebook. Oh, she's got it right there. It's this
here. Yeah.
adorable. Oh, I love seeing the
So
size of
cute.
it. I couldn't tell from the picture. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, like that, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, especially if you had a little girl in your house, that would be so cute.
Yes.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
for grown-ups too. Okay, so I put a link in the chat. It's a Google form and it's real quick, you guys. If you could click that link where you can do it while we continue to talk. It's just a place for you to put your name and your contact information in there. And then we're gonna draw the winner right while we're together today. And then I will get you Mindy's, I will get whoever wins, I will get her address to Mindy so she can send that adorable little basket.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that would look so cute on it. That's something you could put on an open shelf and it would work.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear on your website, and I guess I maybe didn't mention it before, but you are a Christian author. You're a Christian. I'm a Christian too. And so we see the scriptures throughout your book and your faith, your little snippets of faith encouragement. And I know we're a mixed group. We've got a lot of Christ followers in this group. Some maybe aren't, and that's okay because the book is so practical that you can use it regardless of whether you're going to read past that part or not. But I know that's important to you. And so I want to give you a chance to talk about that. Like why someone might be wondering, why is that in there? What is the connection to your faith and the spiritual connection to how you take care of the home? And do they influence each other?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh gosh, I think in a couple of ways. Well, like for example, worship, personal worship. Okay. And if you're not a Christian, maybe like meditation. If I'm going to sit down to pray, if I'm going to sit down to meditate or center myself or whatever, um, I'm not going to find peace and focus in the midst of disaster. I'm just not. It's just going to be a lot harder to get to that point where I'm really focused on God and focused on my prayers and that sort of thing. So I think that's a big piece of it. It's really hard to worship when stuff is in the way. I think secondly, I just feel like God has a plan, and that if I'm spending all my time on my disaster of a house, there's so much better, more important stuff God had in mind for me than that. And I think it's a matter of getting that out of the way. I mean, most of us probably hate housekeeping. Actually, most of us could probably get a house cleaner than anybody else. We know how to do it when we have to do it, but that's not the point. And I think we get the problem out of the way, and then we can focus better on what God has in mind for us. And even like you were saying earlier, it's sort of a matter of service too. Like if I want to offer hospitality, if I want to have a Bible study group in my house, I wasn't going to do that before. There's no way I could have had people once. First of all, there would have been nowhere for them to sit, right? Because the couches were covered with junk. I'm not going to invite the refugee family who needs somewhere to stay for 2 weeks to stay in my guest room, because my guest room was piled to the ceiling with stuff. So it's a lot of different ways that it touches my life. But yes, I agree. The book works either way. Whether the faith elements are important or you want to just move past those, because we all deal with mess. We all suffer from the mess and how it makes us feel. And so, yeah, I guess that would be the main things.
Yeah, I love that you point out just the fact that it's a more efficient way of living. It creates so much space and time and energy
Yeah,
the other
absolutely.
things. And obviously you're a person that wants to be about doing a lot of cool things in the world.
Right.
And
Yeah. Right.
but I will just thank you because, their scripture tells us that women should be encouraging younger women. And that was, or it doesn't have to be younger women, but just helping others in managing their home. That's very scriptural. And that this book has a way that you're impacting a lot of lives in that, in a lot of homes. And that does create, our Facebook group is called Peaceful Home, because that's
Oh, I
just,
love it. That's
that
awesome.
phrase means something to me, because I want to live as a person of peace, not perfection, but peace. A home of peace
Yes.
just
Yes.
blesses the lives of those who live in it and those who walk through the door.
Mhm.
And
Totally.
you've helped me to do that, which is wonderful. So,
Oh,
um,
that's great.
okay, so we've got the link in there. Um, let's talk a little bit about how hard we are on ourselves, especially as women.
Yeah.
Maybe because we don't have it perfect, or maybe it's a disaster right
Right.
now. And so what advice would you have as people, maybe they're going through this process and even going into kind of maintenance mode on it, um, to not be tempted to be so self-critical and to have that perfectionist mindset and then taking on that shame, if it unravels, because
Yeah.
it really helped our home, but I'll tell you, there are times it has totally unraveled on me and I've had to, okay, it does happen.
Yeah. hmm hmm Um, well, let's see. I definitely, we were talking about this before about perfectionism. I was in therapy when it came up how much perfectionism was causing a lot of my problems. I can remember when I was a little girl, because my mother was even worse at this than I was. And she didn't mind me saying that. She let me share her story in my book. I remember I was going to have a birthday party, and she's having a heart attack because she forgot to hose off the back patio way in the back of the yard that no one was going to see. But it wasn't clean too. Um, Perfectionism is a real problem, and it's a very common problem with people who have messy houses. And it is something you got to get a handle on. And I think this story might be in the book about the time I gave my daughters a surprise party. Does that ring a bell at all, Tanya?
I think so.
I we I was trying to work on not being perfect, so I didn't let myself go crazy. My house was at the house. The house that cleans itself plan was sort of about halfway in, so things were neat.
Mhm.
The party was going to be out back, so I really didn't have to focus on the inside. The one thing I forgot was that everybody was going to have to hide and jump out and yell surprise. So my husband got home with our two daughters, and we all had to immediately hide. We were in the house, and suddenly there were people under my dining table. Two people went into closets, and it
All those places we closed the doors.
all the places that I don't want people looking closely at. It almost gave me a heart attack. And then I sat there and I thought, they're not here for that. They're not here for that. And if they are here for that, then I don't want them here. They're here to celebrate my daughters. I forget, they both accomplished something, and so we were celebrating, and that was huge. And it was like, I'm going to let this go right now. This floor under the dining table has crumbs on it. So what? Crumbs are part of life. And that was like a big part of the weight that came up. And that was sort of my turning point for perfectionism. If I could survive that, I was going to be okay. So that's a big one. And the other thing I would say is you have to remember, and I say this as a 64-year-old woman, life has phases. And you gotta, when you're feeling like you think you got a handle on things and then it's kind of falling apart again, first of all, you may be in a phase of life where that's just going to have to be your reality for a while. I look at my daughters with young children now, and it's like, ah, I I remember those days. Your solutions are going to be different than mine. And for example, someone older like me, both of the deaths of my husband and my parents, every time someone dies, what you're getting? You're getting a bunch of their stuff, even when you try real hard not to. So even more comes into your house, and you have to find somewhere for that to go. That's a phase. There's all kinds of, maybe work. You're going through a real hard time at work with a lot of extra hours, and you just can't. Whatever it is, you got to give yourself grace by looking at the phases that you're in, and just remind yourself this is all a process of trial and error, and solutions change. So maybe a solution that worked in another phase, it isn't working now. Don't beat yourself up. Just come up with a new solution.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. The whole point is for it to be freeing for us, right?
Yes, exactly.
Not to
Yeah.
become a prison of perfectionism. And I
Right.
know I get in that stressy place, especially if people are coming over. I have to really do a heart check because it's me wanting to people please. And
Yes.
I'm afraid of being judged,
Yes.
and that's a heart issue on my.
Right. Mhm.
Of course, we want our house to be lovely and welcoming, and we want to be free from the prison of the constant mess, but we don't want to swap that for a prison of, our house is a museum that has to be perfect. So it can be tricky to balance, and we're going to have days that go this way or that way. But um, yeah, that's a perfect story, that illustration that you gave of like,
Yeah.
oh, they saw the places, all my
Yes. Yeah.
corners. We would all
Yeah.
probably be horrified, but you're right. They probably weren't even
They,
thinking about the crumbs on the floor because they were
and
so
yeah.
enthralled
Yeah.
with the experience and the surprise and the
Yes.
joy.
Mhm.
Why let it
Mhm.
rob you of the joy of life?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Because then
Exactly.
we're making it about us and we're making
Mhm.
it about pleasing
Mhm.
everybody else. And I bet those
Yeah.
people were blessed to be in your home that day. And, they walked away thinking that, family is so
Yeah.
fun.
For the girls,
I
right,
had
right.
such a good time at their house, not, oh, there was
They were
cobwebs.
crumbs on the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's a big mindset.
Okay. So, I am going to give you a moment to maybe tell us a little bit, because I think we're all a little bit curious about your other books, maybe books you've written in the
Oh, sure.
past. If you're working
Yeah.
on anything in the process, and I'm going to go draw our winner to the giveaway while you're telling us
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
And then after I announce the winner, we're going to open up and see if anyone else has questions.
Awesome. That's fun. Sure. Absolutely. Well, like I said, I started with it was a 5 book mystery series about a private investigator. That was the $1 Million Mysteries. And then came the series of 3 books about the smart chick mysteries, where she uses her knowledge of household hints to solve crime. I've written a number of standalone mysteries. Whispers of the Bayou, Shadows of Lancaster County, um, Under the Cajun Moon. I'm originally from Louisiana, so a lot of it is down there. And then I wrote a mystery about Shadows of Lancaster County, about the Amish, and I enjoyed writing it so much and all the research that I sort of got into writing more about the Amish. And so I started doing Amish romance, and I'm trying to think. I did a series of 5 books: The Women of Lancaster County, a series of 3, The Men of Lancaster County, and different things like that. Isn't it funny? With 30 books, it is hard to think of them all. Um, I've done a lot of co-authoring. I wrote a book with my husband. It
Yeah,
was
I saw that on your
yeah,
site.
standalone mysteries called Echoes of Titanic. And he's a big Titanic buff, and he was always a huge part of my brainstorming and my editing and all of that. So that time I pulled him in fully, and we wrote it together. That was a blast. Um, I wrote a book with supermodel Kim Alexis. If anybody's old enough to remember her,
Oh,
she's my
wow.
age. So yeah, that was really fun. It was about a woman who uh, a former model who's getting older and grappling with the fact that she's not as beautiful as she once was. That was a lot of fun. That was a mystery set in the world of the spa. So we had to do our research in spas. Darn it, that was just tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, I think my 30th book came out, and I said I need a break. I'm going to take a year off. And
Oh, hang on a second. We just
oh,
got to
sure.
get the muting.
Oh, sure.
There we go. I think we're good. I think we're good.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh, I took a year off. That was in 2018. And I'm just now getting back to work. We had a lot of life happen. Both my
Yeah.
daughters got married. Then they both started having kids. Being a grandma, that's way more fun than writing a book. And we decided to downsize and build our own house. And actually got to design and build a house as a house that cleans itself, which was
Oh, I
huge.
love that.
Made it even so much easier because everything here is designed to stay clean.
Yes.
And it was built that way. That was fun. So a lot of things to distract me, but I am ready to get back at it. So I have just started back in again now, and I've been getting some of my books up in audio. I think you mentioned that
Yeah.
how stuff is on
Yeah, that
audio.
was a blessing to a lot of people
Yeah.
that,
Oh,
yeah,
good,
because we
good.
were shopping on Amazon. I think we were buying them out because they was starting to get delayed. People were like, I
Sorry
can't
about
get
that.
them in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
We had a surge.
Right,
So,
right. Oh, that's
um,
awesome. Surge
well,
away.
I'm just
Yeah.
so impressed with how much you've accomplished
Oh,
in the
thank you.
creative space. And you know what, I think, there are some people that would think, oh my goodness, you don't do your dishes right after dinner. And yet you can go, my goodness, she's written 30 books, so
Right,
it's all
right.
about choices, right, in life. And
Yes,
you let go
yes.
of
Yeah.
some things that have allowed you to do some really amazing
Mhm.
things. Just
Yeah.
so
Thank you.
exciting. So I'm going to have to pick out a book, one of your, I think, fictions and make
Yeah.
some to read some fiction
Oh,
because
good,
they look
good.
really good. So
Some
our
are,
winner,
some are, I
oh, go ahead.
was gonna say, some of them are out of print or a little harder
Oh,
to
are they?
find. They
Okay.
are all available on my
That just
website.
means they're collector's
Um,
items now,
yeah,
right?
there you go. Yeah, you can find them. Yeah, on
So, well,
eBay.
that's the other
But
question I had.
um,
Where's the best place to buy your books? Like, what
um,
is best for you? Off your website? Is that best?
well, the website is best for you right now, probably because everything is, I think, half price. I did a
Oh,
half price
really?
sale a while back, and I think I forgot to turn it off. So I think it's have to check. I think the things are still half price. That's the only reason that's a good place to go is because I have pretty much everything. I have
Stocked.
almost
That's
any
where we're
all of
gonna
my
find them
books.
stocked. Okay.
But certainly also Amazon, local bookstore can tell you which ones they can get or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, it
Okay.
is funny. There has not been much crossover between the fiction and the nonfiction. House Clean Itself, that's an audience, and the
It's
fiction is a
kind of a
completely
standalone
different.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah,
want to
definitely.
cross over. I do. I'm curious.
Ah,
Because I
go
love it.
for it.
So,
Good.
um, and I still read to my kids. They're teenagers, but we still kind of read.
Aw,
We kind of
that's
brought that
awesome.
back. So maybe there'll be something we could read
There
as a
you
family.
go. Yeah, let them pick one. Yeah.
Okay, so our winner, I'm going to announce our winner. It is Joy Swaggerman.
Joy Swaggerman,
And
congratulations.
is still on there. Okay, so I will get Joy's contact or mailing address and I'll get it to you, Mindy. Thank you so much.
Good.
Joy, you are going to enjoy that basket. Um,
Okay.
and then I've got a couple questions in the chat that have come through that
Sure.
I'll start with. So Vanessa says, I feel a prison to my clutter too. I get embarrassed easy. I feel the need to clean the house, afraid of judgment. I guess that wasn't a question, more of a statement, just chiming
Yeah.
in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
I've
of
been there.
like, Cynthia said, I am really having a hard time parting with stuff. My sister asked me if I was a stuffaholic, partly because my husband passed 3 months later.
Oh,
3 months later, his mother passed, and a year and a half, my father-in-law passed. So I have accumulated a lot and still, oops, I just lost my
mm-hmm.
place here, and still haven't been able to part with a lot of my husband's things. So there's that sentimental piece there.
Yeah.
So, how would you encourage Cynthia, Mindy, in
Wow.
struggling to part with things or even
Yeah.
go through the process of sorting and making decisions?
Wow. Yes. Well, first, Cynthia, I would say, God bless you. That's a hard, hard position to be in. And again, it's one of those phases that you're in a phase of life, and that's a tough one. That's crazy tough. I'm so sorry for your losses. Um, I would say one solution would be um quantity control, like of someone, because you mentioned several people who passed away. um Someone who's passed away and you've acquired some of their stuff, how much of that stuff do you feel like you should keep and how much do you feel like should go? And maybe right now here in the beginning you think it should be 4 square feet, 5 feet high pile or whatever, however you would quantify it, or one whole shelf or one whole closet full or 5 boxes or whatever. And as this phase of life progresses, you can review that like every 6 months or once a year and slowly let go of more. um, when it comes to the stuff from your husband, that's going to take a while, and you may need someone to walk alongside you with that. Someone, either a professional. Well, professionals are tough because they don't think like you do. Maybe just a friend who gets it and can help you think through these things. I always, this applies to you, but it also applies to couples. I always advise couples, you can't judge the quality of something someone says is valuable. If you could see some of the stuff my husband has that he thinks is important, and I'm just like, this thing right here, this is important to you. That's not up to me to judge. It's his thing. But what you can agree on is quantity. Okay, honey, you can have the things that are important to you, but you can only have this much, that much. Let's decide together how much that's going to be. You can input on the quantity. It's not your place to judge someone else's quality. So if you do have someone to go through that with you, make sure they understand that it's important. If it's important to you, it's important to you. And letting go is probably going to take a good while, but I just encourage you to stick with it and give yourself lots and lots and lots and lots of grace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Tough time.
I love that quantity versus quality, because it
Yeah.
kind of comes down to that containment, right?
Yes.
Where
Yes.
I don't have to, because sometimes it feels like when we get rid of someone's things, it feels like we're getting rid of them. And that can
Mhm.
get really confusing in a grief process.
Yes. Yes.
So we can give ourselves permission to keep some of those things that make us feel that,
Mhm.
connection. But if we can quantify it and contain it to go, it
Yeah.
all has to fit in this closet, or it all has to be on the shelf, then
Right.
we can
Right.
have some kind of objective way to make some decisions of like,
Mhm.
I can't keep it all, but I'm going to keep this much. And so,
Right. Right.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My husband is big on mementos, and I came up with a saying for him is, uh, if you can't remember why you saved it, it's no longer important and it needs to go.
Oh,
That's not talking about
that's
judge
a good rule of
quality.
thumb.
This is like, he saves things that
Mhm.
meant something to the people that he has loved who have passed away in
Yeah,
his life.
if you
Like,
can articulate why it's
yeah,
meaningful, then
yes,
that's justified. But if
yes,
it's just a habit of saving everything,
yes. I
maybe that.
also actually, one more tip. I did help him. He does have a lot of trouble getting rid of mementos. That's his area of clutter. We took good photos of a whole bunch of stuff, and I had it turned into a book. And on each page is the photo of the beautiful thing and a description of whose it was and why it was important. And then he was able to get rid of the actual stuff, and we just kept
Oh,
the.
wow.
That
So
helped a lot. So
that could be something
that's
when
one
we
way.
do lose a loved one too, make an album,
Yes,
do
yeah,
the
make an
pictures of
album.
it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then again, it's contained, you still have it in a way, it's just contained in
Right.
the
It's just
album.
contained. Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful
Yeah.
idea. I've seen that even with children's artwork. It's hard to throw it all away.
Yes.
See, for artists, I
Yes.
really like the art.
Yep.
Now
Take
they've got
picture.
such, yeah, take
Yeah.
pictures, make an album, you can do digital scrapbooks of it.
Mhm.
You can,
Mhm.
they have frames
Exactly.
now that you can put
They
multiple layers
open from the
and
front.
stack the
Yeah.
next one
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Exactly.
just takes
Yeah.
some clever creative problem solving.
Creative
Yeah.
problem solving. That's
Yep,
it.
creative problem solving. Well, that's all that we have in the chat that I see. But I just want to say, does anyone have one last burning question? I want to give you a chance. I don't want to miss anyone. You are free to unmute and ask or go in the chat. Okay, I don't think we're having any takers, so I think we got everyone. Oh, wait, nope, someone. Who do we have here? Is this Amy?
Sorry. Yes, I'm driving, so that's
Okay.
why I unmuted.
Okay.
I have a place that is extremely difficult for me to find a solution to.
Okay.
We all come in the door and we dump everything on the kitchen table, which is less than 5 feet from the door.
Mhm.
And it is never clean enough to eat it. Ever.
Mhm.
Ever, 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 ever. I don't have the space in there to put something for people to dump their stuff in. Like,
Okay.
talk about putting a basket there. I don't have that space because then they couldn't sit at the table. It's a very small space, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's almost like, how do I teach myself and my family not to dump it on the table, but to take it an extra 30, 40 feet into the next room?
Great question. And that was actually the very first problem I solved in my own home. My kids would come home from school, and if they could just walk to the dining room around the corner, there were hooks for their backpacks and their coats and their shoes and all that. And they instead would walk in the door, turn and drop. And it all dropped right at the front door, right to the side of the door. It made me insane. I had enough room right there. My very first house that cleans itself solution, I went and bought a trunk and I put it there. I didn't tell anybody. I put it there. I opened the lid and I let it sit there. And then when they got home from school, they saw it and they hesitated. And I said, go ahead, do what you always do. And so but I said, do it into there. And they dropped it in that trunk and we shut the lid and my front hall was clean. And that was a huge victory for me. Now, your problem sounds a little harder because, like you said, there's not room for that. One question, is there anywhere else the table can go?
Not really, unfortunately. I have a relatively small house. So the 3 floors added together is only 1,700 feet.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
Is
I
there
have thought
any?
about even clearing out part of the garage by the
Okay.
door and putting boxes there. And I got overruled on that one.
Oh,
So,
why?
because that's where the shoes go right now, and it keeps
Okay.
the shoe mess,
Okay.
the
Yep.
muddy mess and stuff out in the garage anyway.
Right.
So that I kind of get.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay. I would say, stand in the space. Maybe Tanya, maybe you have some suggestions here too. I would stand in that space. All right. The nature of stuff that they're putting on the kitchen table, is it mostly backpacks, sporting equipment, papers?
Papers, stuff that we homeschool, so something that they did in their co-op class, they bring home and just put there.
Right.
Computer and bag. I mean, it's everything.
Okay. Probably. Okay. I will say this, they're never going to learn to walk 30 feet and put it there. This is going to keep being a problem. It really is. I would say either look again at your garage, if it is right there by that door, and see if you can add some solutions there where the shoes aren't. Like if the shoes are on the floor, maybe something that a cabinet that goes on the wall or something like that. If that doesn't work for them, probably I would put containers, open bins on the kitchen table. They're each labeled. And the type of thing you got, the only thing, you don't have to walk 30 feet, but you do have to stand there and give it 2 seconds of thought and put that thing in there and that thing in there and that thing in there. And then when it's time for supper, just take the bins and shift them so that at least you can get to your table. It's so sad when you have a table that you can't get to because you want time around the table with your family, and that's tough. I don't know. Tanya, you have any thoughts on that?
That actually might be the most doable idea that I have
Yeah,
ever heard
there
of
you go.
so far.
Well, I know this
good.
sounds really, really out there, but my thought was if you really have nowhere to put a trunk or a bin or a basket for dumping, literally, what if you had one of those wagons on wheels that you parked it in another room, but you just put it in the kitchen like every
There
day
you
dump
go.
it, and then
There
you
you
wheeled it
go.
away. But I do like what Mindy said about keep thinking around that garage, because that's where the shoes are. Maybe the shoes need to be in a different place. Maybe you just haven't quite reached your solution there. But if they come from the garage to the kitchen table, if you could stop it from getting to the table, I think that would be ideal. Or, whether it's outside or in covered or in the garage. Also, you could go take some pictures of it and put it in the Facebook group, because we've had people do that when you can visually see.
Yes.
Then
that
it's
helps.
easier for people to make suggestions, and I'll bet there's
Right.
some ideas. In fact, I think
Right.
something
Right.
in the chat, someone said, what about keeping the table set with plates 24/7? So then the table, when people visually see it,
Right.
that's already being
Doesn't
used.
go there. Well, because then it's going to go on the floor. I bet
That's
you.
true. That's true.
Betcha.
Needs a
It's a great
container.
idea. May not work. Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone said a coat rack. Now, but again, it depends on people's behavior, because some people just aren't going to hang anything up,
Yeah.
I know some people are hangers and some people are dumpers, but
I think you hit a really important point, and I always forget to mention this. Wheels are your best friend. If you don't want it in that room, but that's where it's going, get something on wheels and then roll
why
those wheels out
not,
of it.
right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I have a lot of things on wheels. I really do, because it's.
And I said like a wagon came in my mind, but there's probably something prettier out there. Some kind of car,
Sure, yeah.
something, if you don't want one of those industrial
Home Goods.
wagons.
Yeah.
Or a cute
Yeah.
vintage old red wagon, that could actually be.
Yeah. Yes.
So, okay. All right. I think we have time for one more question if anyone has one. Thank you, Amy, for sharing.
Yes, thank you. Oh, before we get the final question, let me just say that the leaving the table setup, that actually is a very good idea for a different type of situation, where it's more like if like, well, my husband, I call him a barnacler, because give him a surface and he will fill it. So for him, that would work, because it's not like he uses the dining table for stuff, but if I already had it set, he would keep going and put that stuff somewhere else. So
yeah,
I like that idea.
I have done that for like special, like Thanksgiving is coming. I'll preset way ahead of time so that I'm not having to go back and clear that table.
Oh wow, look at you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you have to
I
really,
like that.
yeah. So Okay, I thought I saw someone, I think Kathy's trying to, okay. take the
I
last-
have a, yeah, thanks first of all, Mindy and Tanya. I got on this late, so I may be repeating myself. I just got the book yesterday, so I'm excited. So I like to cook, and I have places for things in the kitchen, but I have way too much stuff. Gadgets or whatever. How do you know what to keep and what to get rid of, like what to downsize? I mean, just is there any chapter on it or something?
I will say the best purge I ever did of my kitchen
Purges, yeah.
was when a friend, her mother-in-law had been living with her, and the mother-in-law was going to move out on her own again, and they were so happy to get her out on her own, and she didn't have anything for her kitchen. I had a target of a known person who had nothing and needed stuff, and it gave me so much more motivation. I had like 5 spatulas. I really don't think I need more than 2, because if one's dirty, I still have the other one. You know what I mean? We do tend to keep more in the kitchen than we need. So one would be if you can find somebody who actually needs kitchen stuff, that's great. If you have a face on who it's going to, that helps you be more generous in what you're pulling. I would just look at the things that you don't use. Like if you have I have a gumbo pot, because I'm from Louisiana, I gotta have a gumbo pot, but it's huge, and it's down in my garage because I only use it maybe once every 3 months. So maybe look at the things you have, even small appliances or things, if you're not using them that often, if you use them enough to justify it, you can keep them, just don't necessarily have to keep them in the kitchen. So maybe think of a secondary location for the less used stuff. And you may find that once you've relocated it to the less used stuff area, you end up not using it at all. And at that point, then you're more motivated to get rid of it entirely. Does that help?
Thanks so much. Yeah, it helps a lot. Thank you.
Good.
I definitely keep some kitchen stuff in my garage, because like my big roasting pans and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we had one lady in the group just recently share, she donated all her crock pots because she said, I don't use crock pots now. I love crock pots, but she said, I can slow cook in my oven and I never use them, but I felt like I should have them because every woman has their crock pots. But she just came to that realization. I don't use these. I can use the space more than I can use the crock pots. So that's something I think about is, which do I want more, the thing or the space?
Mm-hmm. And it does help throughout the entire house that cleans itself lifestyle. How many things are you doing because you should, and how many things are you doing because it works for you? And that was a should. She thought she should, so she did. She didn't need to because it didn't work for her. Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun.
Me too.
Thank you so much. I have all these new little bits of this in my mind already. And we are going to get the recording out because I know, there had a lot of women that had to work it, but we had over 260 in the group. So they will definitely be watching the replay, and I'm going to be sharing it out. And so I just want to encourage everyone here, share it, because they don't have to be in our Facebook group. This could bless a lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of families. It's just a wonderful thing we can help each other in, and we're so grateful. Have the wisdom from Mindy. So thank you so much, Mindy, for being with us. It was a joy. I love getting to meet you. This was just a treat.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. This is really fun. Really fun.
Okay. And for anyone who's not in the Facebook group, it's the Peaceful Home. You can always reach out to me and we'll get you in there, because we are on week 5 of our little challenge. But, like Mindy said, it took her a year. It's going to take me longer just to get us started. We'll stay in there and help support each other. So you can still join. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Mindy.